I'm Ryan Conn, and you're back for the second half of this episode of Pivotal Change. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we are still talking with Ryan Bates. And if you haven't learned anything yet, this is a guy that knows how to juggle everything life throws at him and make the best of every situation. So we're going to continue this conversation. We were just talking about all kinds of personal development and discipline and focusing on all those areas of life so that you can have real success, which is all the health and wealth of family and passive income and things that lead you to freedom. So Ryan, continuing on some of those things, I am sure in your life, both as an entrepreneur and in the service, you met some unpredictable times or some real high pressure environments. What is maybe a real quick breakdown? What is something that an entrepreneur can do if they find themselves in an unpredictable situation or a high pressure environment in business to survive and win through that scenario?
Well, every stressful kind of situation, whether you're in war or business or anything like that, right? It's an opportunity to change the course of it, right? So just because something goes the wrong way, it's a great opportunity to capitalize on that situation. I try to look at every good or bad situation as a good opportunity. What happens if something gets delayed? Yeah, a better opportunity to maybe work on something else. So and that's also what I look like in war too. You're constantly, nothing ever goes the way you want it to in op. It always is different. And you have to stay on your toes and look at that and be able to shift gears and reset and then retackle and crush it all.
I like that. I like that a lot. Use it as an opportunity. I love what you said, especially as a business entrepreneur. Oh, something got delayed. Well, I can keep working on this other thing that I've been pushing off or wanting to get to. And that's really important stuff. So that's a real quick little mechanism that you guys can plug into your life to be more successful in those areas. So now I want to kind of talk about some of the passions that you have in your life. And we've talked about off camera, so if we've gotten to know each other. You've got things like your Netflix TV show going on. You've got your son who's really just taking off and on fire in wrestling. You've got your wife's business that's exploding. So how do you take your passion, like you were talking about at the very beginning of the episode, and it's been there for wrestling forever, and how do you take what you've learned in wrestling, what you're teaching your son in wrestling, and apply that to your leadership style, your company culture, and your just lessons in life? What does wrestling and wrestling coach have to do with you and business experiences?
I am always a big believer that wrestling is the greatest, toughest sport out there, right? It's all on your own. You have to be self-disciplined, whether your weight, your training. It's only going to get as good as you put into it, pretty much, or it's only going to be as good as you the time you put into it, right? So obviously I started wrestling at a young age, 6, 7 years old, and it's pretty much the main sport I did all the way through. Even in the SEAL teams, they did a study around my class, around 251, 254. They did a test on what kind of sport, people that did a sport for long term, what is the best sport to get through BUDS training, which we have like a 90% attrition rate. And the first was being a wrestler, not just a wrestler that wrestled a couple years, but people that wrestled from a young age all the way through. I think they had some kind of like crazy, like 80% success rate getting it through BUDS. And then that showed you, I mean, even Dan Gable says, once you've wrestled, everything in life is easy after that,
Amen.
But again, I just think the sport of wrestling is just such a gnarly sport. And the thing is, there's no money in it, right? So anybody that's wrestling, they're doing it because they love it. And it's not like they're going to be a rich baseball player afterwards.
Right.
But I definitely think it teaches you the best lessons and in life about resilience, hard work, and self-determination and dedication to something.
Yeah, I love that. And those lessons carry you throughout life, and every difficult thing that you're going to encounter in life, wrestling is going to have a deep part of your core that's going to lead you through that. I've got a little saying that says, wrestlers and Christians make the best kind of people. Now imagine if you're both. So you can be this solid, persevering person on the faith and in the physical world, and your mindset leads you through all of that. So I really appreciate those comments. And so I'm just thinking to myself is, let's say we've got somebody in the audience that's 25 years old. They're out of high school, out of college. They've never wrestled a day in their life. They might be 55 or 65 years old, and they've never wrestled a day in their life. I was like, well, Ryan, I can't go back and be a wrestler. Is there something else I can do to try to ingrain some of what you're talking about into me? Something like we're getting into jiu-jitsu or another type of combat sport that can, even late in life, develop some of these core characteristics.
think push yourself, right? Do any kind of sport that makes you, I guess, in a way to say miserable, right? Something that you're so tired you don't want to do it, but you do it anyways, and you do it like you like it. You have to pick something that pushes you to that level. Whether it be even if you go in the SEAL teams do the same thing. You don't sleep for 6.5 days during Hell Week. Put yourself when you're young, put yourself in miserable situations that pushes your mind and spirit and determination to accomplish it. As you get older, the less physical we can be because we actually start breaking. But
Right.
when you're young, do some marathons, do some crazy expeditions that push your will to the end. That in turn will put a deep kind of toughness in you to get through any crappy situation.
Yeah, I like that. So, in talking about the things that are going to build the core mindset, the core resilience, things like that, go put yourself in uncomfortable, miserable situations, one that obviously are survivable, and you're going to have to hold yourself accountable to finish so that you can develop that grit. So that seems to be more of what I would, maybe it's definitely not a soft skill, but it's a soft skill as far as like there's not a specific, there's not skill sets and there's not a book, a manual you can open and learn resilience. You have to go get the exposure to it. But there are other things
Yeah,
in
it's like
life. Yeah, go ahead.
it's like being comfortable, being uncomfortable,
Absolutely.
right? I always say I always say if you bring yourself to misery and you're used to that misery, then you can climb to a whole different type of misery afterwards. If you
Yeah.
if you're if you're comfortable with staying in bed till 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning and freaking drinking beers and freaking never pushing yourself, then you get comfortable with that, right? If you start waking up at 4:30 in the morning, doing a chili dip, running 5 to 8 miles, you get comfortable with that. Then now you can go to a whole different level.
Yeah. Comfort is the enemy of progress. That's for sure. So,
Yes.
so
Yes.
get uncomfortable, my man. Get uncomfortable. So there's not necessarily a manual for getting uncomfortable, but things that there are some manuals, some SOPs on are things like tactics and strategies and logistics. So transitioning over to things that have more of what I would say a regimented background on it. Can you explain to us just real quick in the military, what's the difference between like battlefield strategy, having tactics, and then just overall logistics and things like that? And how does that thinking go from, we're not exposing ourselves to the grit anymore, but we're exposing ourselves to the goals, the action plans, and those three categories of strategy, tactics, and logistics?
Well, you're gonna, in any kind of special elite group, they don't have some kind of secret sauce of what makes them more elite. They're just masters of the basics, right? So we
Yeah.
train 3 times as much as we do. For instance, we do about a year and a half of training for every 6 months of deploying, and we train and train and train like crazy. So that way, when you get into the heat of things, you're not thinking, you're just doing. And that's what sets any kind of elite special forces apart from just conventional forces. So mastering the basics, understanding what you're going to do, then when you go plan it up, and again, as I say, every op never goes the way it should ever. And you have to fall back to those basic tasks that you are experts on. It flows, and just so master the basics. If you master the basics, then everything else will be okay.
I love it. I can't tell you how much this is preached, both again in wrestling, in business. So if we have an SOP, we have a standard workflow. Guys, master the workflow, stick to it, be the most efficient and effective as you can at that workflow. Then when something crazy happens and comes up, you'll be able to default and you'll have it. In the tactical world, there's a saying that says, you never rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. So if you have mastered the basics and mastered other elite skills, well, you're going to fall to a pretty high level to overcome it. And in business, it's you never rise to the occasion, you fall to the quality of your systems and operations. How do you feel about that?
Exactly. I mean, I don't think, it's funny because even in every firefight that I've got into, right? You don't really even understand what you did till the firefight's over. You don't even really know that you're even nervous. You fall to your basics, you get through it, boom, boom, boom. Then afterwards, you're like, fuck, that was crazy,
Yeah.
and it's all muscle memory, right? So, everything that you've trained and not taking any shortcuts, those all come in handy when the bullets really start flying.
Yep. Yeah, all of those shortcuts are revealed real quick under crisis, aren't they? the guy that can't go the last 30 seconds of a match and loses because he took shortcuts in conditioning, the guy that can't survive during COVID because he didn't set his principles in place and he didn't train his staff the right way and he didn't pivot properly, and the guy in a firefight that took shortcuts and can't do an emergency or tactical reload and send that suppressing fire down range to move his unit forward. All of those shortcuts come in at the worst time possible. Quit taking shortcuts. That's excellent. So Ryan,
you end up dying in wars when you take shortcuts.
Yeah. Thankfully, the entrepreneur, in most cases I know, they're not playing for life and death. They're playing for the financial futures and freedoms, and you can cripple a whole lot of families and all the people that rely on you, the staff and their families, if you screw up. But there's a whole different level of stakes, and we need to take serious things seriously.
Yeah, but if you look at that urgency you have when you do have to fight for life and death, if you take that same kind of urgency to entrepreneurship, that the stakes, and you look at it with those same stakes, you're usually pretty successful.
I'd say you're usually pretty successful. Good. Well, Ryan, this is a good spot for us to jump in. I got to cut to yet another commercial break. But guys, we're going to be right back with more Pivotal Change. So sit in your chairs, keep your pen and paper out, and keep taking the notes. We'll be back right after this.